everyone. I am Billy Dees. Welcome to the podcast. If you've never checked out our podcast before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary podcast. You can find us pretty much on anywhere. The favorite podcast platform you like to use. We are on iTunes, which is Apple Podcasts now, iHeartRadio, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, the Billy Dees podcast. And you can follow me on Twitter. You can tweet me, but you got to be nice now. You can disagree, but you got to be nice. On the studio line with me today is Earl McCune. How are you doing, Earl?
I'm doing well. How are you, Billy?
I'm doing okay. And what we are going to talk about today is we're going to talk about what's happening with the coronavirus, because that's something you cannot get away from. We're not necessarily going to piecemeal out all the statistics and things like that, because that's changing all the time. And quite frankly, everyone's doing that. What we do want to do is maybe talk about what's happening right now in the United States is kind of new to us. We have a thing going on in our society where it's safety versus freedom. And we haven't had to make that choice too often in our history. And we're also going to talk about media and its obligation to balance that act between informing and becoming entertainment, which they often have the tendency to do. So, Earl, let's talk about you real quick. Let's let our audience know about you now. Are you originally from Ohio?
I'm born and raised.
Born and raised, just like me. Aren't you lucky?
Lucky actually, me. Lucky us both.
It's actually not a bad place to live. A lot of people around the country feel that it's nothing but cornfields. And yes, we have corn here, but we're the seventh, I believe, around the seventh largest economy in the country. I mean, obviously, California, Texas, Florida, a few others are bigger than us. Very diverse economy. We have energy here. We have technology here. We have industry here. Medical, which is a good thing. I mean, with what's going on right now and anytime, something's wrong with your ticker, God forbid, Cleveland Clinic and places like that lead the country and lead the world. So Ohio's actually not a bad place. Not a bad place at all. Not a bad place to be at all. You had a internet radio station for a while, and you did it right. I mean, you had a studio, and you've always been, in my opinion, you have a way of having a down-to-earth, common-sense view of things. You're always well-spoken. I've always respected your analysis. So that's one of the reasons why I invited you on. We're going to talk about these things together, and I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you again for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, you still have the SKO Media, correct? And where can people find that?
Okay, real simple. We just have a Facebook page going. Go to facebook.com. Just search SKO Media Group. And we're also on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube. Just search SKO Media Group on YouTube. You can find us there. Basically just Facebook and YouTube right now.
Now, you did have a Twitter for a while. Are you still keeping that up, or have you?
I have the Twitter. I just have not done a lot with it. It needs a little bit of work. So I just haven't really done a whole lot with the Twitter.
You know what I've done, and I know you're going to laugh at me for this. I have started a TikTok account.
I have one too, but I hardly ever use the thing.
Really? Yeah. And if you go about it correctly, I've actually gotten some traffic to the podcast from it, because there's I believe a hashtag called Podcasters of TikTok or something like that. And there's a few other people that do media on there. And I actually snagged one of the big creators on TikTok. Her screen name is KPAL7. She has over like 50,000 followers. Okay. And I got her on the podcast. So that drew a lot of people my way from TikTok. And I got to tell you, you have to do it right. I know that the knock on it is, well, it's just kids, it's just dancing. And yeah, there's a lot of that on there. But if you stay away from that, follow the right things, respond to the right hashtags and all that, it's worth checking out. So kind of keep that in your in your arsenal there. Right. I know you're what's the word I'm looking? An enthusiast about the media. Yes. And we'll go there first. Here's my take on the media, and I'm going to go way back. Okay, during the 1950s, let's say, news was considered kind of a pain in the butt for the broadcasters because there was mandated as a public service.
Mm-hmm.
You had to serve the community. Okay. So you had to talk about what was going on, all these other things. And the real quote unquote real journalists were in newspaper and radio to a large degree.
Right.
Well, in 1963, one of the worst things that probably ever happened to this country, President Kennedy was assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
And that weekend in America, everybody was glued to their TVs.
Right.
And during that time, Kennedy's assassin himself was assassinated on live TV.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And somebody got the idea, you know what? We can sell a lot of cereal. We can sell a lot of underwear.
Mm-hmm.
We can sell a lot of deodorant with news. Okay, because a lot of people watch this stuff.
Right.
And of course, in the 1960s, you had the Civil Rights Movement. You had Vietnam in the 1970s, Watergate. So the ratings war for news began. And then in the 80s and 90s, it just exploded with cable news.
Right.
Okay. And now you got social media in the mix, and now it's off the rails. Now you can't tell what is news, what isn't news. Everything is breaking news. I do watch NBC News in the evening a lot. And the first thing Lester Holt says at 6:30, breaking news. No, it's the news.
It's the news. It's the news. Everything's breaking news in the media today.
Yeah. I don't understand. To me, breaking news is something that's fluid. It's happening in real time. You know,
Right.
what decision that Congress made about some bill or something earlier in the day is not this flashing breaking news. It's news. That's what you tune in at 6:30 to find out.
Exactly.
Now we have the coronavirus. And I do believe that in the pure journalism, that's what I'm trying to say, a sense, let's say, hearkening back to the Kennedy assassination, when you had Cronkite, who did not announce Kennedy's death until he was sure it was correct. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Those old school guys, you have that feeling of this is our obligation to inform the public about the coronavirus. But you also have so many news outlets now that are vying for ratings, and there's politics involved. You know, what are the Democrats saying about the Republicans and the other way around?
Mm-hmm.
How have you been able to sift through that?
Well, myself, I mean, I go to trusted sources myself. As far as anything with the coronavirus, I'm usually going to the CDC website.
Yeah.
Or, I'm checking that information out. That's usually your best source of news, especially with the coronavirus. Because right now, what I'm seeing is so much, like you said it very well. And I've made this point on my show myself of social media and the national media is so intertwined today.
Absolutely. Sure.
Because, and this is a general public thing, people look at headlines. They don't look at the whole story anymore. Everything right now with headlines is clickbait. And that's my opinion on that, because everything's clickbait. Because I'll just give an example. Yesterday, there was a thing going around social media that Governor Mike DeWine stopped the sale of booze going on after midnight last night, which ended up being just one of them Rickroll type of, it was a practical joke going around. People were falling for it. But the funny thing is, this is how people read it now, is they don't even click on the video and see it was a joke. They start reading the headline, and all of a sudden you see all these people making comments, infuriated. Oh my God, he's shutting it down. It's like, is anybody actually ever clicking on the link and seeing, oh, hey, by the way, it's a prank? No, people don't do that. They look at the headline today. And that happens so much because that's what and the national media does the same thing. They will give you a headline of a great example on CNN. Yeah. You go on Dr. Oz's YouTube there, okay? And they're on there. And his headlines is, when will this social distancing end? I mean, and that's the question on there. That is the top headline for the whole thing. You watch the whole 15-minute video, and they don't even mention once about this whole subject. They don't even talk about that. Yeah. They're talking about everything else. All it is, let's get them in. Let's get them to watch. They're not actually clickbait. And that's the thing. But again, how do I follow the news? Is I go to trusted sources, and I actually read an article, and I listen to a video or watch a video or whatever is on there, because I want to get the story for myself. I'm not going to look at a headline and take it at face value. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people do in this country today, is they look at a headline and take it for face value, and that's the story.
Yeah. Well, in terms of social media marketing, when you're doing it irresponsibly, especially when you're doing it with news, this whole thing about creating quote unquote engagement,
Right.
and the headlines do that. You get a bunch of people commenting on there, going to war with each other. That drives up the analytics of that post, and that's all great. But that's here again. It's almost it's equating back to the ratings. How can we get it? Except it's social media versus TV, and unfortunately, getting the ratings, getting the clicks, as you say, is more important than a well-informed public. And I would have to say, what's your opinion of this? I would have to say that the Cronkite days are gone.
They're gone. They're long gone. There's very, if any, real journalist out there as far as TV news. It's all about let's freak everybody out. Let's sensationalize the news. Like the whole coronavirus thing. It's a new disease. So I still think, and I know we're doing all this social distancing for our own good, and I get why we're doing it, but I think there's a percentage of it based on fear because of the media, and that's just my opinion there.
Yeah, and that's a tough line to walk, and
very tough.
That part of it is delicate. I'll give them that, because one of the things that a lot of the press conferences and some of the things, and I haven't watched them all, but I've watched a lot of them, hasn't really addressed. A lot of people don't understand why, let's say, if you have a given 100 people and they're all relatively young, they're all relatively strong, most of them will beat this. Why do we have to stop the lives of those 100 people? And I'm not sure that message has really been clear.
Right.
The answer for that is because if you allow an unpredictable virus like this one is to skip from one person to another, every time it finds a new host, it has the potential to become more deadly.
Absolutely.
And in a nation our size, where it can skip between hundreds of thousands of people, who knows what it's going to turn into? And that they're afraid that that's already happened in Italy, where the mortality rate is almost in the double digits now. And Spain the same way. And we certainly don't want that to happen in the United States.
No.
Okay. But by the same token, you can't terrify people to the point where they're doing radical things that are endangering their own lives and other people around them. So with that being said, now you're a student of the media. What would be your, I don't want to say strategy, but what would be your gauge when you're putting something out to kind of balance that? And I know that's a tough question. It's impossible to answer. Yeah,
it really is. That is the $1 million question. And I don't know if I actually have an answer to that question, because your guess would be as good as mine.
I don't have it either.
I don't have it. And, I would, as a student of the media, basically, yes, I want to inform the public. Here's the brass tacks of it. Here's the facts. But what happens today in the media, all these journalists, quote unquote journalists, will sit there and make it a social commentary as opposed to let's report the facts. Yeah, then their 2 cents, and then their 2 cents, it suddenly becomes gospel because they're reporting it as gospel.
Yes.
And that's what happens in the media today. And I hate to see it, but it's what's happening. And it happens, with the national media. And then, of course, like I said, it intertwines with the social media, because all these national media representatives, they all have their own Twitters and Facebooks and all that.
Sure.
And it's all intertwined. And it's one big mass conglomerate these days. So everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But when you're reporting the news, report the news.
Absolutely.
Give the facts. I don't need your opinion and your opinion and your opinion, because all these opinions, people will take it as gospel and as that's the news. And you got so many different opinions. So many people are saying so many things. I mean, I'll give you an example, Billy. Before this whole quarantine went down, where I work, and where I would be working, but we're closed due to the coronavirus.
Yeah.
I heard a guy talk about we're already into like 20,000 people at this point who have died from this thing. And I'm like, well, this was weeks ago. I'm like, not even close, and that was a couple of weeks ago. I was like, where did you get your news? And he goes, oh, I saw it on Facebook. I'm like, yeah, somebody probably said it on Facebook. And of course, people share, and they run with it because no one really knows the facts. You're getting social commentaries these days. You're not getting news. You're getting social commentaries, and that's unfortunately what's happened.
I am really saddened by the politics of it. You know, I've always felt that if something like this happened, okay, this is one time that we could put partisanship aside, but I'm convinced now at this point, if aliens attack the world, you'd have Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump pointing fingers at each other saying, this is your fault.
Oh, I'm sure.
It just seems like it never ends. And unfortunately, even with the politicians, they're grandstanding. You know, this is an election year, which a lot of people have forgotten about.
Absolutely.
And they're looking for an opportunity to gain points. I was right. You were wrong. And this should not be happening. Right. This is one time you're playing with people's lives.
Yeah.
And I'm very saddened by that. You mentioned the place where you work. Mm-hmm. How has the quarantine and some of the other things impacted you and your household?
Well, as far as my household goes, I've been laid off because of the quarantine, because the governor gave an order 2 weeks ago tomorrow that, my type of business was be closed, temporarily or definitely until this all blows over. So I'm laid off right now. My fiance started a job about a week or so before this whole thing. Well, because she was in training, she was deemed to be an unnecessary piece of the puzzle because she didn't know the job. Yeah. So they laid her off for the time being. So we're both out of work.
Yeah, man.
The kids are off school. So, I mean, we've been kind of just home and spending time as a family and doing things here around our house and trying to get it ready. I mean, I spent this afternoon, we were outside, I was with the leaf blower and trying to clean leaves up and just start getting things ready for, which stuff I, been wanting to do and I've had to put off because last week I was, despite all this stuff going around, I was a little bit under the weather. I lost my voice for about 4 days. I'm still kind of crackling a little bit, so you have to forgive me on that.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure we understand that. Good.
Yeah, and but we've just been trying to stay busy and trying to make the best of it here at home, and we're just waiting. I was eligible to file for unemployment, but I still haven't got a determination yet, even though they said it would be rushed through because of
corona.
But you think about it, they went from 6,000 or 7,000 unemployment cases in the state of Ohio to over 200,000.
Oh yeah, it's way
so
up there.
It's so they're way bogged down. So I mean, I'm fortunate. I have money in the bank to live on. We're okay, but we're just kind of waiting and seeing what happens. So it's and that's what I think we're kind of just in a holding pattern here. So that's kind of how it's affected us. Tomorrow my kids go back to school, but of course we're going to be doing a homeschooling. Distance learning, as they're calling it here in Cuyahoga Falls. So they're going to be online tomorrow doing their online classes tomorrow, just so they can continue doing their schoolwork. So, we're all kind of adjusting, but it's a big adjustment. We're kind of easing into it a little bit.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. My hours over. I have my own business, and then I also I work in a marketing department for a very large nonprofit here in town. Mm-hmm. And now my overall between those two things, a lot less. I'm doing a lot less than what I was, but between working at home and other things that I can do, I can still squeeze out some hours.
Right.
And that helps. My wife is in the medical profession, so she's busy.
Right.
And she can work from home a lot as well.
Right.
So we've been very lucky in that regard. Life is not, my career has a lot of big things that I was working on got put on hold. And naturally, I'm not happy about that. But in comparison with, I have a lot of friends who are bartenders. They're servers, and some of them are very successful.
Same here.
And now they're down to zero, man.
Right.
And I don't know that this stimulus package, man, when you got real big bills coming, $1,200 at best is really not a whole lot.
$1,200 doesn't make a dent in my bills. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. I just bought a house last fall.
Okay.
$1,200 doesn't even cover my mortgage. So just kind of give you an idea there.
Oh, sure.
Like I said, I'm lucky in this, as the standpoint. I've always been really good with my money. I've always saved my money. So, just in case of emergency, I get a good amount of money still in the bank. It's not, and I know it's not going to last forever, but at some point I'm probably gonna have to do something, just maybe even go, do some food delivery or something on the side, just make a few extra dollars just to kind of help ease things a little bit. But
sure, I got you.
I'm not spending anywhere what I normally would spend because we're not going out to eat. We're not going to do, we're not going here. We're not doing all these things for entertainment for the kids. So it's just, okay, guys, we're home, watch TV, play games, do whatever. I mean, we're fortunate, but at the same time, I'm looking at my bottom line going, okay, it's going to be a tough couple of months here, but but we'll make it. I mean, we'll make it. It's just kind of, adjusting your priorities a little bit, making some changes. And like I said, I've been one of the lucky ones. I've been smart and saved my money over the years. So it's, we're okay. But, I look at that savings going, oh man.
I know. Yeah. And I was coming off of a couple bad years there. For a while, I was a caregiver. I took care of my mom. My mom's funeral cleaned me out, and I was just getting, on level ground. Right. And now here again, I'm just scraping for hours every week. Mm-hmm. So that kind of leads us into what's going on in society right now. As I mentioned, America, for the most part, has had it very easy when it comes to catastrophes. Oh, yes. And in the last century, we have not had foreign enemies hitting our beaches. We haven't had to worry about our kids stepping on landmines on the way to school. Right. And it's been 1918 since we have had something like this happen.
Yeah, the flu pandemic,
Yes. And not that we are to that point yet, but let's just say, okay, this is one of the few times, even with 9/11, as bad as it was, we don't worry about buses exploding every day like some countries do.
No, God,
for the most part. Oh, yeah. And for the most part, we have a population that's very comfortable, and we worry about our rights to spit on the sidewalk and, all this other stuff. And now all of a sudden we're being told we have to stay home, and it might get worse. There is a possibility it could get worse. And when people hold up China and say, well, the virus is already subsiding in China, which is true. The caveat to that, though, is that the Chinese government clamped down on their population in a way that would not go over very well here.
No, not at all.
Okay. I mean, they had everybody indoors. They were spraying the streets with all kinds of disinfectant. And when the Chinese government tells you to stay in, they mean it.
Oh, yeah, they mean it. Stay in.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of concerned if this goes on. Let's say, for example, what they're dealing with in Italy happens in our population, which is how many times greater?
Oh, God.
You could be dealing with morgues being overloaded. You could be dealing with bodies in homes. You could be dealing with all kinds of things. And at that point, when does martial law come in?
Right.
So here again, when we're telling the people, when we're talking about the public and we're trying to make them understand that there has to be a balancing act, there has to be, there's a public safety issue and you're going to have to give up some of your rights. But then there's the other side of that argument, which is very legitimate, that says once you start giving up your rights, it's hard to get them back.
Exactly.
So here again, it's a very delicate balancing act. Is that something you've discussed with your family and friends, or how do you feel about that?
Well, that's the thing. We've lost a lot of our rights to, we can't congregate in groups more than 10. Even in your own home right now. I mean, that's there's a big, huge civil liberty freedom gone. You can't have, I'm seeing, I'm looking at articles of people that's died, where they can't have their funerals. Well, they can have a celebration, but they're keeping it limited to family, just immediate family, and you can't have the big funeral like, someone wanted per se. That's one thing. Weddings. I know I'm supposed to be getting married in June. We've had to push our wedding back to August now because of the venue we were holding at. They said we're going to be closing, our doors now until a later date. So they said, okay, if you want to move it back to August, and we'll play it by ear on that. Okay, great. As far as some freedoms in it, one thing is, folks, we have it really lucky. We could still go to the grocery stores. Yeah. We could still go get gas. You could still drive your car and go here and go get food. yeah, it sucks you can't go and sit and enjoy a restaurant like you used to, or go to the bar and meet with buddies right now. But,
Right.
we still have at least enough freedom to actually say, okay, I want to go out and take a walk, or I'm going to go here, or I'm going to, after I get done with this interview with you, I'm going to take my dogs. We have 4 dogs. We're going to take them for a walk in the park. We have those freedoms. Yes. And I'm very thankful we have those freedoms. But, the fact that we lost some freedoms for public safety, I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm an observer of life. I see things. I get the reasoning. At the same time, I go, God, I'm kind of wondering with you. I mean, when do we get some of these freedoms back? I know the president's talking about trying to have the government and have the economy going again by Easter. I don't see that happening. No, it's
going to be unlikely. Yeah.
It's going to be very unlikely because, we can set our own timeline great, but this virus really does dictate the timeline and it's really going to be, folks, until we really clamp down and say, okay, everyone stay in, let's not go anywhere. I think we're still going to be spreading this thing for a while to come. And then there's talk about, this thing's going to get better when it warms up. Well, they got cases down in Australia and it's in the 90s there. So I don't see how, if it's still thriving there in 80, 90 degree weather, how is it going to get any better when the United States get to 80 or 90? I don't see the logic there at this point. Just seeing what I'm seeing now, if it was all,
I agree,
in the northern here, where it's okay, it's still cold, it's in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and it's thriving okay, but you're still seeing this out west, California, at Los Angeles, San Francisco. Those are parts of the country that are fairly warm throughout the year, and they still got it there. So it's, I don't know. I mean, they're saying it may arrest it a little bit, but I don't know. I don't think I know any more than anybody else does when this is all going to get better, and I don't see it getting better anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the weather's like in Italy this time of year, but it doesn't strike me as a place that gets particularly cold either.
Right.
So I don't know how much that's going to help us. But time will tell. Have you been talking about the Corona issues on your SKO platforms?
I've been. The only thing I'm doing now is my show, some kind of radio show, and I've kind of reverted to every other Friday show just because my lack of time. I mean, I got plenty of time now, but since I've lost my voice the last couple of weeks, I ran into I was going to do a show 2 weeks ago. I lost my voice. I was going to do a show Friday night. My computer crashed, so I was a little bit.
Oh man!
So now I'm going to reshoot for everything and do it Friday. And this coming Friday coming up, I'm going to do a quarantine party during my show. We're going to do it live. Okay. So it'll be kind of fun. Yeah, we're going to have some fun. I'm going to have 2 cameras set up. We're going to have one camera. I have a foosball table about 6 feet from me, and I'm going to get the kids playing a foosball tournament while I'm doing the show. We're going to kind of go back and forth and, kind of make it fun, but,
sure.
But, no, I did a couple serious shows. I've been talking about this a lot, kind of along the same lines that we're talking now about, common sense in the media and common sense among people out there, and just trying to take a realistic approach to this and not sensationalize it and just talk about here's the reality of the situation. As far as the economics of this whole thing, we're all hurting right now. We're all going to be hurting. I'm thankful that this stimulus is getting passed, but like I said, $1,200 isn't going to make. It's not going to save my bacon by any stretch. It'll help, but I know they're supposed to be giving for 4 months full pay on your unemployment benefits. Mm-hmm. But I don't see. That remains to be seen how quick that's going to happen. Because as quick as I know they say want to make it happen, by the time you get down to actually putting logistics in order and making it all happen, it takes a lot longer to make all that stuff happen. So we've been talking about all the things, and we've been kind of taking a realistic approach to this. We've taken a lot of phone calls, getting opinions. I've been talking to a lot of folks in the bar and restaurant business, how it's affected them. I have a lot of friends in the bar business. I have a couple really close personal friends of over 20 years who own bars and restaurants. So I've been talking to these folks, and they found ways to keep going. They're serving food and they're doing carry out, and they're at least able to do that to help things, to keep things going a little bit. I've seen a couple of businesses up in the Cleveland area that already have permanently shut down over this, and I feel really bad for them folks.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I see this happening to a lot of businesses, and I think this is my opinion. I'll leave it as that is my opinion. I think it's going to happen to a lot more, and it's sad, but the good news is, and I'm going to look at it this way, Billy, is this isn't going to last forever. Here we are in the United States. Nobody's patient anymore. Everyone wants everything done yesterday.
Yep.
And my patience has been tested by this whole thing. And I know I'm anxious to get back to doing my regular job and earning a living for my family. But right now I know I can. I'm better off being here at home, taking care of my family. I mean, they're better with me than if I could go out and work and risk getting sick. And,
sure.
I'm one of them people who is considered a higher risk. I'm an asthmatic. Okay. So I'd be considered higher risk. So I'm happy to be home, and I'd rather be here with my family and my kids and take care of them until I can't go back to work. So I look at it both different ways. I kind of have a 50-50 split on this, how I look at it. And I kind of try to keep a practical sense of this. Boy, this sucks. But at the same time, it's going to get better. And, in time, we know it's going to get better. They're working on treatments, they're working on vaccines, and that's going to be a year off. But, there's going to be a point where we're all going to have to go, hey, we got to get back to reality here and back to normal at some point. And even after that, Billy, and I'll even pose this question to you, is how much is the world going to change forever after this?
Yeah.
You really think about that now, because you go to the grocery stores, you see all the, I'll give an example, the market district up the road, they have glass shields where the cashier is now. And I'm starting to think, these are going to be permanent things that people are going to think about going forward. I think our sense of, the cleanliness and sanitization of everything, I think even after this virus goes away or cuts down to a limit where we can kind of get back to normal, I think the world's permanently changed from this whole thing.
That's an excellent point. And here again, it's hard to answer that. I would totally agree that social interaction is going to change. I don't know to what degree. A lot of it depends on how bad this gets.
Right.
If it just gets, if we manage to get that curve down as they're talking about and kind of ride over that curve, it may not be so bad. But if we have a huge spike and we're looking at numerous deaths and things like that, then the way we shake hands, the way we greet people,
right,
all that public transportation, people shoulder to shoulder in the subways, these are all things that I totally agree are going to be major impacted, and it could change the social mores of how we communicate with each other and act in society. So, a lot of tough questions here, Earl. I do catch a lot of your live programming. I don't catch them all, but I usually try to pop in for a little bit. You're very well spoken, and I would highly recommend anybody who has a chance. Everybody's at home now. You got some time to kill. There's a lot of things to consume in terms of content now. Give SKO Media a shot, because I've always had a lot of respect for your whole group there.
Thank you.
And I really want to thank you for coming on the program today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. We have been talking to Earl McCune, and his group is called the SKO Media Group. You can catch them on YouTube, Facebook. Check them out. Once again, I am Billy Dees. You can find me on Twitter, real easy to find, at Billy Dees. And for those of you who are a little bit more adventurous with social media, you can catch me on TikTok as well. I am Billy Dees. Thank you very much for listening to our podcast today, and we'll be back again very soon. Well, hello, everyone. I am Billy Dees from the self-titled Billy Dees podcast. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and many more of the best podcast networks. Join me for my commentary and interviews. Follow me on Twitter, real easy to find, at Billy Dees. I am Billy Dees. I'd love to have you listen in.